I'm going to call to order the FMAP Oversight Subcommittee meeting on October 6th. It is 2:30, and I'm going to read the statement of announcement. A meeting notice announcing the date, time, and place of the October 6th, 2021 FMAP Oversight Subcommittee meeting was distributed October 5th, 2021 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who have requested notification. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Central Administrative Office and on the website. Americans with Disabilities Act. The public has been notified that accommodations such as interpreters, mobility assistance, or other assistance will be provided to individuals with disabilities and special needs if requested in advance. The agenda is should be in front of you, it's this subcommittee is not really a voting committee, so we'll just go through the agenda as presented, taking no votes, but only talking through the status of the FMAP, 10% FMAP money. We're a group formed to monitor this money, talk about how it's distributed, provide insights and information with the committee's input on how to distribute and oversee this amount of money that was given to us by federal government, or should be given to us by the federal government. We haven't gotten it yet, but we will be getting it. And so we're planning this committee is just planning for all of those things. And I appreciate everybody for being here and being a part of this discussion. The next item on the agenda is the status of the CMS, which is the Center for Medicaid Services?
Medicare and Medicaid Services.
Yeah. Approval of the DDSN's 10% FMAP money. And FMAP, just to be 100% transparent, since we don't like a lot of acronyms around here, Federal Medical Assistance Percentages Funding is what that stands for. So we're all on the same page.
All right.
So, okay, Pat, turn it.
South Carolina Department of Health and Human Services is the lead Medicaid agency, and they're responsible for submitting the statewide 10% FMAP plan. We provided them our budgeting plan. They incorporated it into their plan. They submitted it on or about July 12th. I spoke to them 2 days ago. Since that time, all the states have been in a similar situation where they've been getting several back and forth information requests from CMS prior to approval. We've been asked one question. Our question had to do with telemedicine, whether or not included internet service, which it does not. And 2 days ago, they said they should be on the last round of questions. Some states, several states, have received approval. The vast majority of them are like us in that final question and answers back and forth to get the things clarified, but they expect approval at any time. They were expecting at the end of September. Obviously, we're in October, so I really do believe we're really getting close, but I don't have a definitive answer as to when.
Okay. So the FMAP budget plan is in front of everybody. We spent a little bit of time in our first subcommittee meeting. This is our second FMAP Oversight Subcommittee meeting, and in the first, we spent some time on 3 line items, I believe, of that budget, and kind of talking through some scenarios of distributing this money, how we can look at getting this money out the door when we get it, making sure it's provided in an equitable way. We had shared, I think, some information since our last meeting about the different options. And Pat, can we talk through some of those options? Sure. regarding that today?
At our first meeting, the discussions centered around preparing for the initial approval so that we can expedite funding to the provider network.
Yes.
And the first three budget items fit that category. 1 and 2, we talked about how to allocate those funds. Are we going to have a competitive process? Are we going to have an allocation based on some sort of standard? Although we don't have any approving authority, our general thinking was let's just allocate these funds through some objective manner in a fair and equitable way. And we came up with at least 3 options. One was based on the provider's gross revenue that DDSN provided them. Other one was on their percentage of personnel. And the last one was on the percentage of, come on, help me out here. It was personnel related. It was
staffing cost?
yeah, it was total personnel versus like FTEs. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Full-time, okay, full-time.
Yeah.
Employees, okay.
And we built a pretty extensive spreadsheet with the allocation based on those 3 scenarios, sent out to provider network. Everybody wanted to use, I got 100% short, like FTEs for the second one pertaining to the incentives. The first one, it was split. Some people wanted to use revenue, some people wanted to use FTEs, and there were a couple of derivations of that. And my recommendation was, let's just keep it simple and have FTEs for both. The first one was only $1 million, and that way we have a simple communication plan, a simple allocation plan. So we kind of we recommended that, and then at the commission meeting we talked about it, and I think we took a vote on that. Is that correct? I'll have to double check that.
Yeah, no,
but
I can't remember.
I think we did. I think we did, because that way we're ready to go if it's approved. And so that's what we did for 1 and 2. And for 3, the question there is, we want to provide a grant to incentivize and reward the provider network for getting the at-home day services going, which many of them are doing at a loss because of the spacing requirements and the really large number of staff that you have to have show up every day, regardless of the number of individuals that show up.
Right.
And the question was, what do we want that grant to look like?
April.
And we said, let's go back to April 1st,
Right.
which was the beginning of the 10% FMAP, and do our calculations to give people credit for going.
Yeah.
And then once we get the approval, we'll pay them, I think it's $7 a unit going forward. And I think we agreed for that recommendation. I think that was a commission, I'll have to double check that. I think it was a commission recommendation voted upon, so that
Yeah, I think it was.
we're ready to the starting gate when it gets approved. Not that it's going to get approved at 7 o'clock at night and we're going to approve it at 8 o'clock, but at least we can act without having a formal commission meeting when this really is, I think the state director has the authority to act after we get the approval.
So when CMS gives us, CMS will tell us a dollar amount, correct, when they approve it, and it may be less than 45 million, maybe more, we don't know. Is that still the case?
I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but if you read the letter of the law, it is 10% FMAP reduction or an increase in reimbursement reduction of our costs on all of the home and community-based service procedure codes. And we estimated 42.5. HHS thought that was a reasonable estimation. We have not received any money FMAP increase. So I imagine when it does start, the funding question is going to be, can we use our money and get reimbursed, or are they going to send us a big lump sum? I'm not sure about that. What they did for the 6.2% FMAP was they approved that. It was effective January 1st of 20. And when it finally got going, like in April and May, they gave us a lump sum for the first 4 months and then started the FMAP change to our day-to-day billings.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. So we won't have to make any adjustments to the budget plan for the money, as far as you know? Like if we get less or we get more, I mean,
Even when they approve it,
yeah.
like, for example, what I can do, is probably a good thing to do, is we are, we have billing information for June and July. So I can look at what we've done in June and July for all those service codes,
Mhm.
you know, and do a simple multiply by 6 and see where we're at. But based on 21, that was a pretty good number. I mean, it should go up or down. I thought it might go more up than down. But we'll be able to estimate that shortly with a couple more months under our belt.
Okay. I know we're not going to spend it all at one time, because there's different buckets of money and different programs and different things that go into distributing and using that money. We have 3 years to use it, right?
Correct.
Okay. So let's just go back to the gap funding. So if we were to get approval on Monday for the money, we would be getting to providers their money within a few weeks, or like
It depends on the guidance we get. If they approve it and they provide us six months worth of money, which basically this has been ticking since April 1st.
Right.
So matter of fact, I can go back and measure from April 1st. So I got 5 months of data I can estimate. So I have a pretty good estimate. I'll do that after this meeting.
Okay.
And they say, your approval, here's the money, go do it, then I think we can act as quick as you want. If they say you have the approval, you're welcome to spend your own money and get reimbursed, then that's another option. But I think we have to wait for the guidance to come out. But at least we're primed to act as quickly as possible. And we do have resources to act if they so let us act without receiving the money first.
Okay. So we have the list of the providers' total billings for fiscal year 21. Pulled. Okay, so it's just a matter of executing on that
We have the
information.
spreadsheet ready to go, and once we take that spreadsheet that we handed out last time, we have to do, there were some blanks in there on the FTE side, because very, very, very small providers did not provide us FTE information, so we have to put in some numbers there. But once we put those numbers in, we'll put every provider has an anonymous number that we can plug in there, and we can send that out to providers, and they can look at it, and they can see what's coming. And then we can follow it up as soon as we can. All the execution authority are in place.
All right. Same thing with number 2, which is the targeted staff retention and recruiting, which is, extremely critical right now based on the climate that we're dealing with and the issues we're dealing with. So that too will be executed
It's
quickly.
on the same spreadsheet,
Okay.
and all we have to do to that spreadsheet for the third one, which is on the same spreadsheet, is the at-home utilization. And since our last meeting, we have 1 more month utilization under our belt. So all we have to do is update those numbers.
What type of tracking or reporting would we be doing, or asking or thinking of doing regarding 1 and 2? I mean, we're talking about the front end of the execution of getting it out, but what types of things need to be done on an accountability standpoint?
When we send it out, we have to provide a brief description on the accountability mechanism that we want. Because we also, when we send it out, there's such a great need. I imagine them spending it in a relatively short time, but we can't expect them to spend it like on the first day. So we just got to give them a general idea of what accountability is needed, and probably give them a 6-month deadline. And if someone needs extension after that, they can so choose. And then what we plan on doing is setting up either a portal on our webpage or a SharePoint, so that people can load their information without sending tons of emails in and out.
So they will be allowed, for example, for the gap funding, to spend it on whatever they want, or does it have to start their parameters around how they can spend it?
I think the way we wrote it is,
Provide latitude to recover from impact of COVID-19 due to additional costs, lost revenue, and capital
right,
depletion. General parameters for use of these funds will be developed, and certification of use will be required.
it's very general. We will put some general requirements out there, but when we're giving great latitude, we don't want to lock them into parameters.
Right, so give me an example, like what a general parameter might be, since I've not done this before, and I'm just.
If I would give $1 million out to our provider network and we allocate it based on the FTEs, that would parse out to not a ton of money.
Right,
And then we would literally say, you can spend these monies on the exact requirements we said, basically, recover from the impact of 19 due to additional costs, lost revenue, or capital depletion. And within those three umbrellas, it's the responsibility to interpret that general guidance and provide us a response. And I think they're all self-evident. If they lost revenue, they could say, I had to put more money into my at-home day program and to overstaff it because I didn't have enough revenue come in, and I'm going to use that to supplement my costs. And I think one detail that I'm glad you raised that is because this is an April 1st program going forward. We're already 6 months into it.
okay.
The question will be asked, what if I had costs in April, May, and June that I've already expended? Can I reimburse myself for the same costs? Or do I have to do it going forward? I think that's probably a question for this group right now that we can discuss.
I think if it happened by April 1st, after April 1st, it's good to go. You know, if you spent the money.
I think that's fair.
So you just have to show the receipt for spending the money, or showing, I mean, is it just saying I spent 20,000
I think they
on
have to
this,
show
or?
they have to show a rational basis and some documentation that they did it. And I think the level, given the amount of money, be not burdensome.
That would be in line with the auditor.
So, yeah, would internal audit help at all with this part of the process, or, is this just stuff coming into your office and then, I mean, I don't know, just thinking of resources and people. And
Audits, management executes. I mean, they're welcome to look at what we do, but they should not be in any type of deciding situation or they lose their independence and objectivity.
You could review for reasonableness after
After
the
the fact.
certification's made.
Okay,
They can sample it.
That's what I meant.
okay, great, just want to make sure. Okay, so, you posed the question of, are they going to reimburse themselves up from April 1st on, since we're currently, this money goes back to April 1st, or if it should just be on new, I guess the other option, which you didn't get to, but I think you were going to say, after the date that we get the money approved.
Either going forward
Using it
or
then.
how far back can they go? I think the law says you can go back to again, when I read it, it was like you could have retention payments back to January 1st. This is not a retention payment, but we're asking them, given the fact that it started April 1st and we are 6 months into it, it is prudent to have them have costs that meet those qualifications to
Yeah.
use as justification.
Okay.
The challenge for all these providers is they have gotten federal money from a variety of sources. And every source, to include ours, is you cannot use these funds
If you've been
to
reimbursed.
supplant other needs or other federal funds that paid for the, you can't have the same lost revenue or extra expense claimed twice. So that's a very, and I've just talked to the provider network. They are an honest group out there. They are sweating bullets to make sure that they don't double count anything. So some can go back, some can't go back. But there will be some requirement, and I think the requirement on this won't be great because the amount of money to any one provider will not be dramatic.
Right, right,
Number two is a little different. That's a larger amount of money.
right.
And we may want to say, we may want to say, we want that going forward to solve today's, the future problems. But again, I'll defer to the providers because you're living it and fighting it.
I mean, our overtime's gone through the roof with COVID. That's one of the things that's hit us is you've got an employee that's out sick or they have a child that tests positive and they have to quarantine. You got to find someone to cover them. That's cost related to COVID, I think.
Yeah.
Totally.
So,
Yeah.
Can you go back to April 1st on
Yeah.
the second budget item?
oh, yeah, I could.
You think so?
Absolutely.
I think it's legitimate.
Yeah, I mean, we've got our payroll records.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
And I would say that's a cost that every provider is experiencing. I know you guys are
Yeah.
experiencing it at the regional centers.
Yeah.
You know, so,
Overtime.
yeah.
It's a big expense, yeah. Burden. Okay, so we're saying that we would also develop the, for item 2, the accountability and tracking reporting mechanism that we are going to do for item 1. Is that what I heard you say? Just
Yeah, we can flesh that out a little bit greater because it's a lot more specific towards, retention, incentivizing. Just give them some examples to make it easier for them to realize the level of documentation required. So, do we want them to go pull all individual payments to everybody, or would it suffice to say during the month of April, I had, 892 hours of overtime that was for COVID related, such as these things, and make that statement. Are we going to want them to send in the documentation or have that documentation available upon review? We may do the latter, which would be my preference, so that just like we are undergoing an audit for a random audit from the CARES Act from the state government, they're coming in testing our documentation, and we may collect all this, and you may sample some of that and go out and they provide you the detail. I would not want them to send in detailed records. I would want them to send in a narrative of what they have to justify it.
For item 2?
2 and 1. But with enough specificity that if we ask for it, they wouldn't be bobbling around as to what we're asking for. We're asking for overtime records for the month of April for 10 people that were out because of covering for somebody with
all right. So 1 and 2, I think we've through the main parts of those 2 items. What about 3? This is the day services, and
they don't have to provide us anything because we have their actual utilization information.
so in terms of the how to implement, so we have a list of the day service providers and units billed from April 1st, 2021 to the present. And then you're saying once approved, the money's approved, I believe is what you mean by once approved, we will likely go retroactive to 4/1 or 7/1, which since we voted the last commission meeting, it's definitely 4/1, okay, on this chart, okay, and not an option. Okay, so you are saying that we would be ready to go on those funds as well because we have all that in-house.
We have data up through the end of September.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right, so looking at the other remaining elements of activity, or money that we want to benchmark for the other areas that the commission voted on. Which area, Pat, of these items, need the most attention to execute on? Or is there anything we need to spend some time on regarding
We've talked about
these?
that internally.
Okay.
There's 8 remaining items.
Okay.
Just check my math here. 2. I have in 4 categories.
Okay.
One category is to pay for increases in the IDRD waiver. That's something that we will have to calculate, but it will not be an immediate burden. As most of you know, the IDRD waiver was sent to CMS last week. It contained, I think, significant rate enhancements. And I have rough estimates, but I wouldn't want to publicize my rough estimates right now because they're still kind of rough.
Mm-hmm.
But we will need substantial state match to cover the increased rates if they're approved by CMS. So those funds are sitting ready to be executed, but they will not be executed until at least January 1st. But the forecasted need of having it has come true, and so we'll be ready to meet that obligation when it takes place. The next one is, I got my glasses on, it has to do with training, which is a $4 million funds over 4 years. I think we generally agreed that we have a training task force,
Right.
and I think they would grab the leadership on executing that bucket.
They haven't met yet, I don't believe. We've put a pause on our
Okay.
subcommittees, some of our other task force and subcommittees. But that should be reinstated soon.
That'll be their deal.
So, yeah, we can engage them in that assignment.
We have one for telemedicine and one for telepsychiatrist. And both of them would require a team to develop a RFP for procurement.
Okay.
And both those areas are in the operational section. Rufus, we have extensive information from the provider community on telehealth, telepsychiatry. We deal with Department of Mental Health. And so when we get the go for that his team and others would have to develop an RFP and a procurement process. So that would not happen overnight, but it would happen in a methodical procurement approach to make that request. And so the remaining 4 are what I think we should focus on. And in each of those, I put them in my last bucket, which is that's going to be a situation where we're going to have to canvass the provider community, and they're going to have to complete a document, a request, with some level of competitive justification. And then when they come in, we, as an agency and as a group, will have to coordinate vetting them and making grant awards.
Okay, which numbers are those that make up the four remaining ones?
I know
On the
10 and 11.
10 and 11, okay.
Number 7, grants for generators. And
7.
the 3 buckets, and then the waiver slots. That is, I would put the waiver slots in this. So there's 3 buckets, 7, 10, and 11 is what we should focus on. And number 6, that has to do with waiver slots, I would put that in the same category as the IDRD waiver budget. There's not an immediate need for those funds because we do have waiver slots to allocate. As we get into sometime over the next 6 to 18 months, there could come a time when we need these funds to start waivers if we run out of allocated slots. The 7, 10, and 11 is where we're going to have to come up with canvas and criteria to have people respond and make decisions.
Okay, so if we look at 7, just drill down on the detail of that. So how would a questionnaire on that look? So we're saying, how many generators do you have? How many do you need? Do any need to be replaced? Like,
I think
How would that work?
we would come up with criteria, and just off the top of my head, probably the highest criteria would be a generator to a, and I'm a provider friends talk about this, to a common facility that could also double as a hurricane
shelter.
shelter in place. So day programs and things like that would get probably the highest priority. Many counties already have that through FEMA funds. There's several that don't. For example, we're in Charleston. They have a new facility without a generator. I would think that would be
High priority.
high priority because they're in the hurricane bead zone area. And then after, we'd have a number of criteria, and then people would respond. And I think the need for the criteria one may not be $1 million worth, but then we get to criteria two, it may be, generators, probably in the community, ICS would probably get a priority over community homes. We have some criteria, and when we get all the input in, we may decide, do we allocate that proportionally? But we'll have to come up with some criteria
Right,
to make some decisions.
Geography might be one,
It could be.
if they're on the coast or they in the upstate.
Yeah.
And then just kind of go down from there. How do they serve as a shelter?
Right.
That would kind of be a
Right,
point
that's
system.
right.
If they do, then they might qualify for a generator.
Right.
So what is the state of the need of generators? I mean,
I think when
curious,
it comes to county day program generators, over the last 4 years through FEMA grants, every county that has one at one has gotten one.
okay,
Matter of fact, we talked this morning, we're still on our last FEMA grant from 2017
okay,
that we're going to implement in 4 counties. So there are some counties without it that did not get part of that program.
okay,
If they want to apply, I'm sure they would be a priority order.
okay.
But I think we're pretty well covered on those types of facilities in each county.
Would one day program need more than, how many would they need? Is it like?
I think it's a couple
It's like-
hundred, I think it's a couple $100,000 per
The cost,
day program building for one generator.
right? So I'm just kind of thinking.
It's not going to go a long way. There'd be more need than $1 million.
Yeah.
So we'd have to have some competitive priority process. And my recommendation is we probably just get the providers together to come up with the criteria, and that way it worked well with items 1 and 2, where once we shaped the battlefield, they pretty much locked onto the one they wanted, and there we go. Halfway solving the problem.
All right, so that's number 7. What about 11? So grants to residential providers to pilot technology in lieu of staffing. So you said we needed.
I think the providers, there are a number of providers that are out in front of the rest of the provider network in using technology.
Yeah.
So we'd have to get them in on the criteria setting, and we'd have to do the same thing. But I think the amount of money that we allocated was very, very generous. So I think there's more than enough money for good ideas. And so when people make their applications, I think then our group's going to be doing some sort of threshold criteria, and then after you do that, you may find out that you may have to trim some of the requests back a little bit, but I think that will be a much more, we'll definitely have to bring in some people with some expertise on that to make those determinations, because I think a lot of this is we want to stimulate providers to I don't say experiment, I don't want to waste money, but I want them to stimulate providers to get used to this technology. Because with, you can just look at the direct support professional shortages, technology is in our future in a big way. And I think I was talking to your boss one time, they're up in the state of Michigan, they have CTH2s where they do not have third shift. This is common because they can't get staff. They have technology to cover it, okay? Some providers in the state here do that,
Yeah,
but very, very few.
right.
And, you know, necessity is the mother of invention, and I think here's a great opportunity for us to give people guidance, let them listen to like maybe a webinar with some of the providers that are ahead of the curve, give them ideas, have them build their proposals, and then we allocate funds with some higher level of accountability, because it's easy to waste this kind of money if you don't really have a good plan
Yeah,
and an expectation they're going to implement it. So that would take a little bit more oversight.
yeah, okay.
There are some programs out there that will do that 24/7. That we need to seriously look at.
The problem is they don't work for all of our consumers. And so
There you
it's
go.
just gotta be varied and, yeah. Okay, all right, so that was, so we talked about 7, and that was 11. So with 10, grants, case management to support mobile workforce, increasingly rely on virtual technology. So the item on this chart says how to implement given finance funds, send out a canvas which includes information on the relative need to meet the threshold. So have we done, like, has that been done yet, or is
No.
that like going to be done when we?
We have to wait until we get approval.
Right.
They could jiggle this, they could give us guidance. I think when we did the first 3, which was good to get everybody, you know, get things in the starting gate, we're starting to raise expectations out there in the provider community, and I think it's good, but I wouldn't want to start doing canvassing before I get approval.
Gotcha.
So I think once we push that money out in a very short amount of time, we can organize some providers and, you know, within a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, get out a decent document to start. And I think some of these we might have to have some sort of webinar in advance to generate what the options are, what success looks like, the type of opportunities out there for using this technology. Some are really ahead of others, and some are, you know, want to catch up, but it's hard for them to make a proposal. And so I think we have to educate them a little bit more as to what has worked and what hasn't worked before we just ask for a request and put money on the street.
Right. So we're gathering or identifying which providers that have case management, that provides case management, which ones are using technology, and we're going to reach out to them as soon as we
know who
get this approved. Okay.
those that are the leaders, and we'll ask them who the other leaders are.
Okay. But most likely they'll be asking for money to cover technology for this
Yes.
grant, this
Yes.
particular grant. It'll
Yes.
most likely be a technology only. You know, we say to support mobile workforce. Grants to case manager to support mobile workforce, increasingly relying on virtual technology.
Is that more folks working from home?
Working from home, working from their cars. Case managers are getting rid of, you know, dedicated cubes. They have just common cubes for people to come in and crash. They're really promoting, I think they were doing that before COVID, but I think COVID has just accelerated that type of workforce. And if you attract a certain person that likes to work from home, that's accountable from home, there's all types of applications to promote a virtual workforce.
All right. I was just thinking of, this is kind of a broad statement, so I'm just kind of curious how we're going to support mobile workforce, just that term can mean a lot of different things. So I just,
Yeah, we're not gonna buy them cell phones, we're not gonna do the basic stuff. We're doing, the electronic signature technology, they may need equipment upgrades for mobile. I think we have to, it has to be practical, but at the same time, we're arming them with non-personnel resources to meet.
to serve the consumer more efficiently.
More efficiently, but
and
also.
to do paperwork that they have to submit more.
And
efficiently.
with conflict-free case management, the old days, I think the case managers are gonna have to cover multiple counties, and you have a lot of case managers. As you start spreading out your county network, you can't have an office, brick and mortar's office in every county.
Right.
So they'll go into a county that the board's giving up their case management, and they'll take 50 cases. Their home office may be 60 miles away, and they may hire case managers from that board who live in the community. So they're gonna have to set up a virtual way to do business for most of their activity.
Okay. Got it. All right, so that would be the remaining buckets, which we termed 7, 10, and 11 that we needed to discuss for today. So
We can get it lined up in the starting gate. I don't want to do anything until we get it approved. But once
That
we get
makes
it
sense.
approved, we can work through the coalition, the human service providers, and they can be ready with people who, we'll get the people who are ahead of the curve on some of these technologies to be on the group, and then we'll get together and we'll figure out a webinar and a way to communicate options and expectations, and then start the canvas. But that's a mass of activity, and gotta have dominoes land, go in a certain order so that we don't wear them out with 4 canvases coming out the same week. But people are ready to go. People are ready to go.
yeah. If we get the money approved on, let's say, December 1st, we have 3 years from that date, or 3 years from April 1st of this year, or what?
I'd have to read it. I thought it was April 1st in 3 years.
What happens if we have not executed all this money by that 3rd year? Do you know?
I don't know. I hope we.
I mean, I hope we don't
I hope
run
we
out,
had
but
it.
let's just say, we can't execute on all this money for whatever reason. Just give it back, or,
They should fire us.
okay, all right, I'll hold you to that. I just was curious if there's a penalty or anything that, we have to think about from that standpoint. Okay. Hopefully that won't be a problem, but, I always try to think of all scenarios when it comes to DDSN. So just curious. Okay. I think those are all the questions that I have. Does anyone else have anything that you haven't already asked, or that needs some, any thoughts or ideas on anything that I haven't brought up that you were curious about, or anything stand out that seem pretty? All right, Pat, nothing else on for today that?
I'll take some of this stuff and I'll give it to the Greg and Dawn, and we'll start rolling. And I just don't want to we can talk among ourselves, but once we get rolling, you can have some of the providers lined up to start those little groups, and we'll get them going.
Right, okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, maybe, when do you think we should meet again, Pat? I know, I can't remember, we had put the last meeting on, this meeting date on the last agenda, but I don't know if I have a meeting on, I've seen a meeting date for the next month, so should we, what do you thoughts on that?
I feel, and again, feel is just a feeling, that this 10% FMAP has got to be approved in the near term. So I would say,
A month from now?
once it gets approved, maybe we save the next meeting for a Teams meeting, because once it gets approved, there'll be a lot of these logistical questions that we need to work out.
Okay.
And that may be a good time, because, you know, you guys can't plan exactly when that's going to happen. But if it happens on a Monday, you can say, hey, get your stuff together, let's have a Teams meeting on Wednesday. And then that way people can rally without having to disrupt their schedules. And we can then make some hard decisions as to the firing chain on getting this thing going.
Okay, so we'll wait till we get the approval of the money at this point, since we've discussed and tried to do as much prep work before we have the money, and now wait to receive the money and the instruction, and then we can set a meeting after that to talk through the next phase, the next step of it.
Depending on what guidance they give us,
Right,
we'll build some plan
right,
and then we'll get
just set a
together.
meeting at that point. Since we don't know when that's gonna be, there's no reason to put a meeting on the calendar right now, so. All right, well, if that's all that we have, then I think, we can adjourn. This meeting is 3:15, and we're good, so we can cut it.